All of you are probably familiar with this WebAIM study that came out recently. Well, so they go out and do this every year where they go scan about 1 million sites on the internet, and then they come back and report the average number of defects that they found across all these different sites. And this year, the number was 60. That's not good. And if you look at it over time, it seems like the number has been around 60 for maybe the last 5 years or so. That's not good either. So the question is, why is this happening? And of course, there are many reasons for it, but I think the main reason, the most important reason, is that you have only one accessibility expert for 200 developers in an enterprise. And that's, by the way, a good case scenario. So what happens now, and the way this manifests itself into a problem, is that if I'm a developer and I've just built something, whether it's a web page or a feature or whatever, and I want to ask my accessibility expert for help, I might have to wait for days, if not weeks, sometimes even months, in order to get that feedback. I can't wait. I cannot afford to wait. So what I'll do instead is I'll just ship the product as it is, roll it out into production, and that's how accessibility defects get rolled into your websites. So that's obviously a problem. But there is good news, actually really good news, because for the first time in the industry, I think, we are seeing a confluence of 3 factors that I think are really going to help us move the needle from an accessibility point of view. There's a new way in which you can integrate accessibility into your software development process. That's the first thing. There's a lot of great work that's being done in the standards bodies, specifically the ARIA Authoring Practices Group has done some fantastic work, which we'll talk about in a second. That's the second thing. And the third thing, of course, last but not least, is generative AI, but only if it's done right. Okay? So let's look at these things in a bit more detail, starting with the first one. Most software companies develop software in the manner where a designer will put out a design, a developer is then going to code it up, it's then going to go to your QA team, and they'll do some testing on it. If you're lucky, it'll go to an accessibility team, they'll do a little spot check on it, and then it gets rolled into your website, into production, right? That's typically how software is built. And for a long time, enterprises have been trying to shift accessibility left. That means they're trying to test for and detect accessibility issues at the QA level before it goes into production. That makes a lot of sense. It's the right thing to do. But what if there was a way where this could be shifted so far left that you're actually preventing accessibility issues from occurring to begin with? So imagine a situation where a designer cannot submit a design to development that has accessibility issues in it. What if a developer could not even commit code and send it to the QA team if there were no accessibility issues, if there are accessibility issues in it? We call that prevention. So there's this shift that we can see now where we're shifting from detection to prevention. And I think that's really exciting, and it's really going to help us a lot. The second reason, of course, like we talked about, was the work that's being done in the standards bodies. And this has been going on for a while, but it's really coming together now, where the folks in the ARIA Authoring Practices Group, as a part of the W3C as a whole, have done some fantastic work to provide us with a blueprint, a literal blueprint of how the most common parts of your website should work from an accessibility point of view. And this is basically things like, buttons or accordions or other kinds of drop-down menus, et cetera. So they've given us a blueprint or a functional specification of what that component should look like. And that's really cool because as a developer, I know how to follow functional specifications. And if I do that, I could get to 100% compatibility with screen readers and keyboards and voice control and other kinds of assistive technologies. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that your website will be 100% accessible, but I am saying that the components that comprise your website will be very, very accessible. Now, there could be mistakes that are made at the page level with headings and landmarks and things like that, so we have to watch out for that as well. But if you have a clean design system and a clean component library, it's a huge leap, a giant leap forward in terms of actually being able to make this accessible. And I find this very exciting. The third thing is generative AI. As I said, it has to be done right. AI has a lot of promise, but it's got a lot of challenges today. And first and foremost is what we call hallucinations. And the second is around training bias. From a hallucination perspective, I went out and asked a model, one of the common models on AI. I said, give me an image of a Bavarian house in a field of sunflowers. And it came back with something not even close. I mean, the only thing it got was sunflowers, but there's no house, there's no nothing, and that's all I'm going to say about it. And we think of this as a hallucination, which obviously means you can't really build a reliable system on top of it, right? That's the first problem. The second problem is what we call training bias. Now, all of these AI models are built on top of, basically built using data from the internet. Now, that's the same internet that WebAIM found was not very accessible. So it stands to reason that the current form of AI is not very good from an accessibility point of view. And we decided to test it out, so we asked some of these AI models to go out and build or give us the code for 40 different kinds of patterns or components. And it stands to reason, because it's not very good at accessibility, that it came back with not a very good result. In only 10% of the cases, so that's 4 out of 40 components, did we find them to be accessible. The remaining were not. So that's obviously not a reliable system. But, if you can do it, it's not easy to do it, but if you can do it, if you give it a big training set, and imagine that this training set consists of your code, your design system, your component library, and your standards or interpretation of WCAG. If you can give it that, and you can constrain it in terms of providing some guardrails that will prevent it from giving you the wrong answer, and that obviously has to be informed by a lot of expertise in accessibility, the technical ins and outs of accessibility. If you can do that, then things could be a lot better. And that's what we did. We put out a little thing and we gave it to our enterprise customers to try out. And in a sample of about 500 different kinds of questions, including code, we were able to get to about a 97% accuracy rate. Now, that's not perfect, but it's a lot better than 10%. And we're not stopping here. We're going to do more and more. And I don't think we all need to, as an industry, just stop at the chatbot thing when it comes to AI. The opportunity is much larger. We can embed this directly into the coding environment for developers so that it's taken care of at the source. And what I mean by that is, envision a system where a developer can literally just highlight the code, right-click, fix it for accessibility, and the system will go out and do all the work to discover all the dependencies and complexities in that code and show the developer how to do it. The developer is still in control. They'll just say accept, and now their code will be accessible, but they've learned along the way, and you're spreading that knowledge as well. I find this super encouraging and super exciting. So to just sum up my level of enthusiasm and optimism is to say that for the first time in this industry, I see these 3 factors coming together. A new way to integrate accessibility into your development process, a lot of great work being done by standards bodies, and the generative AI promise, if it's done correctly. All of this comes together, and this problem is absolutely solvable. Now, all that's left is for us to just do it. Thank you.